I've actually never ran an Amazon ad, which I know is like,
are you kidding?
people are probably like, what?
All of those low content books, and you didn't have to run ads in order to get
I think even now, I think people totally underestimate the value of research and like really nailing those keywords and the A+, like all of that stuff. I think people really, really underestimate how big of a difference it makes. So
hello, everyone. My name is April Cox, for those of you that don't know me. And this is our Marketing Monday session that we hold every single Monday for our mastermind members. And we have a very special guest speaker today. I have Rachel Harrison-Sund, who is here with me. And I'm just going to do a brief introduction and I'll let her fill in some more details. I met Rachel actually when I was looking for self-publishing knowledge, and she has an amazing YouTube channel, and I was delving into all the low content stuff that she was covering, and I just love her energy and how much, how informative and how well done her instruction was, that I messaged her and said, Rachel, I would love to get together with you and see if we can do some sort of collaboration. So it started me being a fangirl. And then we've had a couple of sessions. She's had me on her channel. I've had her on mine. And I think you guys are going to really enjoy this session, which is all about low content and how can you supplement your children's books with some of the low content. So I'm going to go ahead and bring our speaker forward. So Rachel, why don't you go ahead and fill in all the details that I didn't cover besides me being a fangirl and all that. Tell us a little bit more about your background and how you started doing this.
Well, first off, thank you so much for having me here, April, and for such a warm and glowing introduction. I was blushing a little bit there. Thank you. Yeah. Likewise, you've been able to fill in so many knowledge gaps. I've never published any children's books before, and that's something that I think I would probably like to do sometime down the line. So I know who I will be coming to if and when that ever happens. But yeah, so I started self-publishing back in about 2014. I was working as an art director in advertising at the time, and as so many of us in full-time jobs do, Google, how to make money online. And I came across this interesting business model, which is basically doing research on Amazon to try and figure out what types of books people were actually looking for, and then creating those books. So basically assessing demand and then creating some supply. So I started off with some nonfiction, moved into fiction. And the way this works as a business model is, in order to scale, obviously you can't be writing multiple books yourself. So I was doing the research, and then I would hire a writer, multiple writers even, to write some of those books concurrently. And then I would purchase the rights for those books. And then I would sell those books on Amazon, and I would collect the royalties. So as I said, I started off with a few nonfiction, and then I quickly moved into fiction, where I would come up with the outlines basically. And I had this really wonderful writer that I worked with for a couple of years, who would write not full-length novels, more like novellas and novelettes in some very, very interesting fiction and romantic fiction genres that I had never heard of and never in a million years would have heard of had I not been doing all of that research to find out what people were searching for. After a couple of years of that, I couldn't quite seem to break past the roughly $4,000 a month barrier. And probably about half of that I was paying to my writer to get those books. I mean, as you know, writing is an incredible skill. We should be paying writers very handsomely for their work. And so that's what I was doing. But I couldn't quite get enough profits for me to sort of quit my job. So that's kind of when I discovered low content publishing. With my background, that was something that I could do on my own. Of course, these low content books, they don't take weeks or months to write. You're not writing a full-length novel or even a novella. These are books that can be created relatively quickly. So when I switched to low content publishing, essentially I was able to cut out that middleman, creating all of those books myself, and then I was able to retain all the profits. And that's kind of when my self-publishing business kind of exploded. And I was doing that for a couple of years. And then I just sort of had enough people asking me like, hey, what are you doing? How are you doing this? And that's when I started my YouTube channel, which I never would have done. I've always been kind of introverted and really not enjoyed the spotlight. So even just a couple of years before starting my channel, if anyone had told me I'd be starting a YouTube channel, I would have been like, not likely. But I had decided that I was going to create a course teaching people the system that I was using. And I knew that YouTube was going to be where people could find me. So I guess crawl out of my shell and allowed myself to be in the spotlight in that way. And that's basically what I've been doing ever since. And nowadays, things have just grown. I have another program as well. So I don't really do any self-publishing myself anymore. I'm really just focused on helping my students that come through my program, Low Content Profits Academy. And then, as I said, I've got another course as well. Basically teaches people how to take a skill that they already have and monetize that into a digital product or service-based business. So that's kind of the my background in a nutshell.
Jennifer's asking, when you pay someone else to write these books, do you put your name on it as an author? How does that work?
So I actually have never published anything under my own name. I've always published under pen names or brand names. So when I was publishing, for example, this romantic fiction, I created pen names that kind of went along with whatever those niches were. So my most successful pen name, his name was Odin Nightshade, and that was like paranormal shifter romance. And again, this was all like totally brand new world for me. I'd never even heard of any of this stuff. So I published, I think, under about 3 or 4 different fiction pen names, just depending on the niche. I would try and come up with a pen name that, kind of sounded like it related to whatever that niche was. And then with the low content books, I did more of like brand names, just like what you would find if you're at a bookstore and you're buying a daily planner or, a notebook, you wouldn't see that published under somebody's name unless there's someone who has a following or something, which I didn't. So I just came up with various brand names for that.
Michael's wondering, are all the pen names under the same Amazon KDP account?
Yes. So when you can have one, and I mean, you can only ever have one KDP account unless you can publish or you can create an account under your personal name. And then if you have a business, like a registered business, you can create a second KDP account under a separate legal entity. But yeah, never open up more than one KDP account under the same legal entity, because that will get you in big trouble.
Right. You can just change the author name to whatever the pen name is, and nobody knows that they're connected. Only you do on your KDP account. For people who don't quite understand what are low content books, can you kind of give an overview? Like, what does that mean? Is it a coloring book? Is it a notebook? What kind of constitutes low content?
Yeah, and it's funny. I've always kind of hated this term. I don't know who came up with it, because I don't know. I just don't particularly like it. But I didn't come up with it, so there you go. But it's kind of just an umbrella term for any type of book that really doesn't fit into that fiction or nonfiction kind of genre. Just as the name implies, books that have little to no content, often repeating content. So typically that's things like daily planners, journals of any type, 1 line a day prompted, what have you, notebooks, guest books, any kind of logbook, workbooks, coloring books, activity books, puzzle books, all of those types of books. That's what I would consider low content. Now, fairly recently, and I say, within kind of like the last year, KDP has started recognizing low content books. So when you publish them, there's a little checkbox that you can tick to say this is a low content book. And their definition, I believe that in KDP, now I've never published a coloring book, so I don't know this for sure, but I'm pretty sure that coloring books and activity books are not considered low content. But there is, when you're doing the little tick box in KDP, that they've got that little question mark that you can click on, and it'll tell you what they consider low content and what they don't.
Can low content really be profitable?
Yeah, I mean, it's been very profitable for me for sure. And I think there's kind of two main sort of groups of people that can experience, the most profits. I would say people like me, where they were publishing at scale as a business model unto itself. So, like I'll just get serious with you guys. I published several hundred different types of these low content books. So when you're publishing high quality books at a volume like that, you can definitely make many thousands of dollars a month in profits. The other type of person that I think this could be really profitable for is someone that already has a following, maybe an author, like some people on this call, a coach, an expert, even an entrepreneur, that they have an email list. So they've kind of got that built-in customer base that they can promote to. If you've someone that's got a few hundred or a few thousand or even tens of thousands of people on your email list, you're not going to have to publish books at scale the way I did. When I was doing this, I didn't have an email list. I had no following. So I had to create scale. But if you are someone that just wants to publish one or two books that can sort of complement an existing offer that you have or an existing book that you have, and you've already got that built-in customer base, I think that could be very profitable as well.
Now, with some of my authors, they might start with just one book. And it's very difficult to take a children's book and be able, and just one, and try to get lots of traction with just one book. Usually it's like 4 or 5 or more books before you start seeing things moving in the right direction. So do you think that complementing it with other things like low content books can be helpful in order to kind of build that interest in the book?
I think it can be for sure, depending on who the target audience is, what type of book you've already published. I think it's going to be individual to everyone. But, let's say, like with your book, your anti-bullying book, you could easily turn that into a coloring book series, or you could create some sort of like an educational workbook or something like that, where the child and their parent or guardian or caregiver could sit down together and you could have questions and answers or just activities that all sort of tie back. So in that way, you could create sort of this cool, I was going to say feedback loop. I don't think that's the right term, but one book can help sell your other books, right? If you've got this one children's book, now think about it like, I don't know, the thing that first kind of comes to mind is like kids movies and then all of the attendant merch, right? Like the kids see a movie and now they've got to have the figurines and the books and the pajamas. And so it can kind of work in that way. And, they get one thing and then they want to see this thing, or maybe they buy the toy first and now they want to see the movie. So I think these things can work in concert in such a way where one just exposes them to the, if someone buys the main book and if they're on your email list, now you can be promoting these other books and there could be a whole collection. And so I think there's definitely the potential there for all of those books to sort of feed each other's sales and just get more of those books in front of a wider audience.
One other thing that I noticed with some of my authors who take the one book and then they can create a couple of other things, maybe a notebook, or they can create or a workbook or an activity book. And if you can get 3 books, now you have access to a bunch of different kinds of brand ads that you wouldn't have normally had access to, because you need to have at least 3 books to do it. Is that, one of the benefits that you think that low content books can help kind of just flesh out a catalog? Because I'm thinking that that's probably a wise decision.
I mean, I'm going to take your word for that. As you know, I don't know anything about ads, which is why I had you over talking to my crew, because you are I've got a huge information gap in that area. I've actually never ran an Amazon ad, which I know is like,
are you kidding?
People are probably like, what?
All of those low content books and you didn't have to run ads in order to get
I think even now, I think people totally underestimate the value of research and like really nailing those keywords and the A+, like all of that stuff. I think people really, really underestimate how big of a difference it makes. So all that money that I've made self-publishing, I've never run an ad. I've never run an
Wow.
ad. So, but the way you're describing it, if you need those 3 books to be able to get
Yeah.
those brand, I mean, that sounds like a big benefit there. If that's how
Right.
that works, I would, I can't speak to that, but from what you're saying, it sounds like that could be a real
Right.
advantage.
Do you have kind of a go-to list of these things must be true in order to have good sales? Like, in other words, this is a good idea, or this is a good niche. How do you figure out? Because there's so many different ways you could go with low content books. I'd love to get a little peek into your process.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was really because, like I said, I didn't have a list or anything. So I really relied heavily on basically like what the market was saying. Like I was only creating books that I knew people were actively searching for. And the way I would do that is I would just go on to Amazon. First I might brainstorm some ideas for keywords. Then I would type those into the search bar. And like if you're just typing in a keyword and that drop down menu appears, if you see your keyword in there, that does mean that a real person has typed that in to the search bar. So that's kind of a good first sign. Okay, someone has looked for this. And then, you can use some free tools like AMZ Suggestion Expander. I really like Publisher Rocket, which is a paid tool, but the benefit of that is, I would go on to Publisher Rocket with the keyword idea, and then that would just like spit out every single related keyword.
Mhm.
And it would show you, how many people per month, and these are all estimations. Amazon doesn't release the data, so it is just an estimate. But it would show you like an estimate of how many people are looking for those keywords each month. So for me, I was always looking to find keywords where I knew people were searching for those keywords and also wasn't super competitive. There weren't already 5 billion really, and no matter, like nowadays, no matter what keyword you type in, there's going to be tons of books are going to appear, but most of them are going to be garbage. So it's really about, can I create something better than this? And oftentimes the answer is yes, because there have been a lot of people drawn to this notion of low content publishing as a business model. And they are just going full force, cranking out like literally thousands of these books. 99% of them are pure trash. So it really doesn't take much. If you're someone, on this call, I'm going to assume that you're all like very invested in producing very high quality books. And if you can do that, then you've got a real advantage. So yeah, I kind of forget exactly what the question was, but was kind of my sort of like the Coles
Right.
Notes version of what my process was. I
Mhm.
really wanted to focus on creating a book that I knew real people were already searching for.
Do you have specific software that you use to create these low content books, like the planners and some of the other things that you do? Anything that you can share with the group about kind of the process that goes into creating some of these kinds of books?
Yeah, so for me, I mean, I do have a design background, which is obviously advantageous. I've always used the Adobe suite. I think maybe it's just, I'm middle-aged now and probably kind of like getting set in my ways. Like there are better, cheaper options, but like I'm just familiar with that environment. But I actually always recommend for other people the Affinity suite because it's almost the exact same as the Adobe suite, but
Mhm.
it's like one low price, whereas the Adobe suite
Right.
is a monthly subscription. Having said that, I know many successful low content publishers that have used everything from PowerPoint to create their book, which does make me cringe, but
It makes me
it
cringe
can,
too.
it can be done. I've seen people use Word, which really makes me clutch my pearls, but again, it can't be done. I think at the end of the day, it's whatever program you're most comfortable with.
Yeah.
And, it's like, what does that finished file look like at the end of the day? Like, if it looks good and you are comfortable in that program, then really it doesn't matter what the program is.
Right. It matters what the quality is in the end.
Yeah, I mean, Canva is another one as well. I've seen
Mhm.
people use the free version of Canva, and Canva's got some great templates and things like that. So it does make it
Yeah.
very easy. It just gets a little bit cumbersome if you're using Canva and you've got more complex interiors because it just doesn't have, some of the capabilities of a proper desktop publishing software. But yeah, that's my preference is I use InDesign.
Pat asks, what type of low content books do you publish? And what do you charge, for example, for a planner in order to make a profit?
So I've published quite a few different things, planners, and that's basically what I ended up. So after I tried various different, I'll just give you the rundown. Planners, I did a lot of 1 line a day journals, guest books for like every event imaginable, anything from baby showers to funerals, something called Cornell Notes, which is kind of like a college level sort of like note-taking system, plain notebooks, blank recipe books. So in the beginning, it was kind of like that whole throwing spaghetti at the wall to see what stuck. After a lot of experimentation, I found for me, planners were what was really doing well. So I basically just doubled down on those. For planners, I usually charged about $9.99, $8.99. Basically, I would look at what everyone else was doing, and then I would tack on like $1 or $2 more, which kind of goes the opposite. You know, a lot of people will try to undercut, like if everyone else is doing $8.99, I'm going to do $7.99. But I think when you're creating something that's high quality, the customer doesn't mind paying an extra $1 for something that they want. You know, that $1 doesn't really make a huge difference for the consumer, but it makes a huge difference for the publisher who's getting an extra $1 on every copy sold. I mean, that can be the difference between several hundred or several thousand extra dollars per month. So that was kind of my pricing strategy. The other thing is I would always try and ensure that I was making at least a $2 royalty.
That's good advice.
Yeah. And of course, everyone's going to have a different threshold, and that's obviously not set in stone. That's just kind of what I did.
Jennifer's asking, do you get low content books copyrighted?
No, I don't. I mean, going through the copyright process it can be expensive, and you are automatically protected by copyright just when you produce a work. Now, that's not, of course, going to help you if you want to take it to court or something like that. If you are someone that's only creating like one low content book and you really want to protect it, you might want to think about doing that. But for me, it just wasn't feasible because of the volume I was creating.
What I would add to that is if what you're creating is very unique and you want to make sure that people aren't stealing it, then go and do the copyright, spend the $65 to get that done. But if it's just an inside of a planner and it's very similar to many other planners, or you have like one planner interior and you've got a bunch of different covers, then you probably don't need to do that. If it's something that's very common and you've got like a different slant to it, I would just judge by how unique is it, and do you really want to make sure that if somebody else copies exactly what you have inside, that you have a copyright you can point to tell Amazon to take the other one down. Okay?
Yeah, I mean, if it was something like, you know, what I mentioned to you earlier, April, like maybe you create sort of a workbook that's based on your, you know, Welcome to the Club anti-bullying book, and then it's like really containing a lot of your IP, you know, that might be a situation where you might want to look into that.
Right.
But you're right, something just for a planner that's really the main differentiator is like your cover art or something like that, and it's probably not going to be worth it.
Leslie says, I'm confused. I created an activity in coloring book to go with each of my 2 picture books last year. Would those be considered low content? I think you said, Rachel, that's more like I think it's more like medium content, and Amazon doesn't really think about them as something that's low content. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, I would have always considered them low content, but yeah, exactly. When Amazon introduced low content, I don't think they actually consider coloring books or activity books to be low content, because they are a little, you know, it's not just like a lined notebook or a planner. There's more going on there.
Yeah, so really they're workbooks, notebooks, activity books, and coloring books are there's just a lot more to them, unless yours is very simple, and then perhaps Amazon might kick it out and tell you it's low content, but play around with it. And there are ways. I was thinking that, for example, if you have some beautiful artwork and kids are loving the book itself, perhaps getting ready for them to go back to school, wouldn't it be kind of cool if you had a notebook that had your character on the front cover or something like that with an encouraging message, or some interior, one of your interior artwork, something that the kids could really appreciate and enjoy. And that becomes just one more book in your arsenal that you can also include when you show, like, collect them all. You've got all these different things available for kids. I think that can be really nice. And usually you've already have a copyright on the cover art, whatever it is, because you've done it through your picture book already.
Yeah, that's why I think this is such a cool complement to the children's books, because the children's, like, most of them are going to have these really cool, interesting characters that you can use. And I imagine, like, in a lot of cases, you might not even have to, get extra artwork. You can probably just, like, if you've got the original files, you can just pick different characters and scenes directly from some of the books that you've already published and use those, depending on what assets you've got and whatnot. But
And
I think it's a really cool application.
Yeah, I've even gone to Etsy and some people that I purchase Canva templates from a lot, because I'm not a good designer, but they have these beautiful notebook things already designed, and I can say, yes, I'll pay $6.99 for that. And then I can reuse it as much as I want and just create a cover for it. There's a lot all readily available for you out there that you can then take, modify for your own purposes, introduce, and put your own fingerprints on it, and then go from there. Barbara says, do you have your own illustrations if you have pictures in your low content books? And I would say also add to that, like, cover design. What do you typically come up with for cover design if you're not having already something specific in mind, like from a children's book?
Yeah, so I think I like this question because it ties into another question here, which was, if you're not a graphic designer, how are you supposed to do this? So even though I do have a design background, I never actually created, like, any of the illustrations or anything like that, because I was doing this at scale, and illustrations take time, and, like, really intricate designs take time. So me and basically any other successful low content publisher, they are using, like, professional stock imagery. So for me, I would look for, like, really cool patterned backgrounds, floral backgrounds, things like that. And then I would import those into my program. I might make some customizations. I'd add some typography, maybe some other design elements. But really, what I was doing was just collecting all of these different stock images. And I was never using free stuff. That can get really, really tricky with copyright and stuff like that. And it seems to be quite rampant, where you can, like, you're downloading free stock imagery, and then you find out later, oh, that site, like, took it from some other artist or something like that. So I would always use, I got a lot of stuff from Deposit Photos. They've got some good stuff there. There's also Creative Fabrica. They've got tons of stuff. And I would basically just import different design elements, and then I would be, rearranging them myself. But I was never creating any of that stuff from scratch by myself, because it is just really time consuming. So you definitely don't need to be a professional designer to make this work. Most people making this work are not. But I will say that you do need to have a good eye. You do need to know objectively what looks good and what doesn't. And if you don't, you need someone else who can give you feedback.
Jennifer says, what kind of printing do you do? Do you print on demand for this stuff? I assume you do, right?
Yeah. So one thing you could do, I mean that the books that get printed through KDP, the quality's decent. I mean, it's certainly improved over the years. You've got the paperback option now, you've got the hardcover option now. And so, yes, I've always done print on demand through KDP. I mean, print on demand's great because, you're not messing around with, you're not getting minimum print runs, and then you're, storing inventory, like, in the corner of your living room floors, and you're not, like, shipping. There's no customer service. So I really love that. One thing I would love to check out sometime this year is getting my book printed, getting a book, finally printing a book, publishing a book under my own name. But I'd like to check out Lulu, because they've got a few different other options. They've got, like, spiral bound.
Right.
They've got gold foil and, some higher quality options. So that's something I'd love to try. You can publish through them, and then you can still publish that. You can still sell it on Amazon as well. That's not something I have experience with, but it's something I'd really like to try, especially just to get some of those, higher quality little details to add.
I actually do publish my self-publishing Made Simple workbook. I'll just hold it up for a second. I published this through Lulu because I wanted the coil bound. And
Oh, great. Yeah, I'll
they
have to have a
also,
conversation with you another
yeah,
time then. Yeah.
and they also integrate with my website too. So they integrate with Shopify, they integrate with Wix, and also WordPress. So you can just hook it into your website. So when people purchase, they get printed from there and they get shipped out. So it's kind of a cool way of getting extra benefit there through Lulu. It is
I
more
also found,
expensive.
yeah, I also had a conversation with someone recently. I don't know if anyone's heard of this. It's called Vervante. Have you heard of that,
Yes,
April?
I have. Yeah, they have a lot of different options. Also very expensive too, if you ask me. But there are a lot of different options that you can use.
Yeah, I think you can get like leather and all sorts. And apparently they will handle the warehousing and the shipping and everything for you. But I guess, as you say, you're going to be paying a premium for that. So
Right, exactly. If you've got, and they do have, I believe, even other things like box sets and stuff like that. I've started to see on, I think it's Vervante. So it's kind of interesting.
yeah, and they do
seeing the
card
different
decks and all sorts of
Mhm.
stuff like that. So
Yeah.
that's something else I'd really love to check out.
Do you have any much experience with journals, Rachel?
I mean, I think journals can be an excellent complement to any books you might have as well, of course, depending on what it is. But what a wonderful way to take some of those ideas from your books and translate them into some sort of like a prompted journal that really, is based on whatever the book is about. I think there could be like all sorts of really cool possibilities there. I just bought my 6-year-old her first little like diary / journal. And I could just see like how cool that would be if, some of the books, especially now because she's learning how to read,
Mhm.
I could just see, like, I know that she would be super excited to get something that she could write in that maybe
Yeah.
tied back to one of her favorite books. I
Have
know
you
that that's
have
something
you
she'd think is really cool.
yeah, have you seen the Mommy and Me ones? Like it's mother-daughter journals where the daughter writes and leaves a note for mom, and then the mom writes and leaves a note for
Oh,
the
that's
child. And
such a good idea.
you have to check that out. I thought that was amazing. And they have dad and for dads as well. But it's one of those things where I know one of the parents that I spoke with says she bought one of those journals and they had a rule that no matter what the child wrote in it, she wouldn't get in trouble about it. She could confess stuff, she could tell her mom she was mad at her, whatever. But it was fun, and they went back and forth with that. And it's a keepsake that they'll have for a long time, that the notes back and forth between them. I thought that was really sweet. And there are
That is, yeah.
different ways to use journals. Kelly says, my medium content books have really low sales. How often should we be planning to release new ones so that it helps boost the algorithms, or does it not matter how often things are released?
I don't think that plays much of a role. If you're not experiencing decent sales, the first thing I would do is go and check out my keywords. I'd probably try swapping a few of those out. I just wouldn't do multiple things at once, so that you don't want to swap the keywords and the description and because otherwise you won't know what it is. But the first sort of line of defense, I guess you'd say, like I would go to my keywords and I'd probably swap some of those out and see if that helps. But just in terms of like how often between releases and things like that, I don't think that really makes a difference.
Do you think subtitles make a difference? Does that help also get your book picked up for some of the terms that you need?
Amazon does definitely look at your title to see if the keyword is in there, which is much easier for low content books. That can be a little bit more difficult for a children's book, or, fiction books especially. It can be a little bit more challenging to get keywords in there in a way that actually sounds natural, because, Amazon will sort of deny or, won't allow you to publish a book if there's sort of like blatant keywords in your title or subtitle. So, what I always like to do is just say it out loud. And if it sounds natural, like something I would actually see on a bookshelf, then, you're good to go. But if it sounds like just a garble of keywords, then you got to rethink that. But yeah, Amazon does look at your title information for keywords.
Pat says, do you use KDP's ISBNs or do you use your own?
I've always used the free ones. Again, that's just been a scale thing. It just becomes financially unfeasible if you're having to purchase ISBNs for all of them. Now with KDP's recognizing low content books, they don't actually give ISBNs to anything that falls under their, low content category, and that's okay. You don't need one anyways. Now, if for whatever reason you wanted to get an ISBN, you're obviously welcome to do that, but it's not necessary for these types of books.
AJ says, do you offer any design courses as well? And I know you and I have been talking about some other things you're doing and some training that will be upcoming and available. So why don't you answer that question, and let's transition and give you some time to talk about the upcoming things that you've got going on that the group can take advantage of.
Yeah, so in my program, Low Content Profits Academy, I've got the whole second module is really all about design. So talk about design fundamentals, different styles that you can go for and things like that. And then I have a whole other module, which is basically just tutorials on how to use the design software. So I show you how to create both a manuscript and a cover design in Canva if you want to use a free program. And then I also show how to create a cover and a manuscript in Affinity Publisher as well. If you're a little bit more design savvy and you want to invest, I think Affinity Publisher, it's under $100. I'm pretty sure the last time I checked. Again, you can certainly do it in Canva. It's got some really nice capabilities. The thing I like about Affinity and InDesign is they're just more robust programs. So, it's got a lot of features and capabilities that Canva doesn't have. So, you can create like basically rules where, if you wanted to update all of the fonts in your entire, let's say you've got a 200-page planner and you want to adjust a certain font, you can just do that once and it will update throughout the entire document. Whereas, in Canva, you would have to go and do that individually. So it's just more robust. But yeah, so those are the trainings that I offer in my program, because most people that embark on low content publishing, they're not designers, certainly not professional designers. So they need that sort of training. So yeah, I have lessons on how to customize templates. A lot of people will buy pre-made interior templates, and I always encourage people to customize them. Just so that you have something that really is unique. So I'll show you how to adjust the fonts and, make various customizations. And then I also have a really short lesson on just how to outsource the whole design process. If it's something where you're like, I'm not interested in design, I do not have a good eye and I just really don't want to touch that with a 10-foot pole, then some people do outsource the entire process just to make it easier on themselves. That is an evergreen program. So the doors to that are always open. I believe I've given you a link if anyone's interested in just looking at I've got a masterclass, which kind of takes you through the whole process. I'm actually updating the masterclass this week. So you might want to wait until next week to send that link out so people get the most updated version. I've kind of revamped it because I haven't updated the webinar in a couple of years. So the new one, I'm really going to be going through like each of the different steps. So you'll get a sense of exactly what my process is, kind of from start to finish, some of the big mistakes to avoid when you're publishing low content books. So yeah, it'll probably be about a 60-minute masterclass, and it's pre-recorded. So it'll be on demand. You can watch it anytime you want. And then at the end, I talk a little bit more about my program if anyone's interested in that.
Leslie's asking, how long does the design course take to go through?
Well, it's not a separate course. It's just part of the main Low Content Profits Academy. I mean, really, it's probably a couple of hours worth of lessons in the main design module. And then I've got a separate design tutorials module, which is more like you're seeing me give you a tutorial on how to set up. I think I show you how to create like a guest book in Canva. Of course, it doesn't really matter what the book is. You're just seeing like how to use the software. And then, a couple more lessons on how to do the same thing in Affinity. So probably 2 or 3 hours worth of lessons in the whole design part of the process.
I'm going to wait until Rachel gets back to me with the sign up for that with her new updates. And then I'll go ahead and post and send it out to my group here for the Low Content Profits Academy. And I do have an affiliate link for Rachel. So it doesn't cost you any more to use that. But if you want to go directly to her website, that's perfectly fine with me as well. I'm hoping to be able to bring you back at some time in the near future, Rachel, maybe to do a little kind of hands-on stuff with the group as maybe a teaser or a small workshop that we could do together. I think that might be really helpful.
Yeah, that'd be great. Whatever it is that someone wants to actually see, whether it's, design software stuff or whatever, like I'm totally happy to do that.
Yeah.
I love design, obviously. That's my thing. I always love talking about that. So
there was one other question from Tina. Is there a certain number of pages used when creating these products?
I think there's a minimum, which is, I think is it like 30 pages? 24, that sounds right.
But what do you usually create if you're creating a notebook or
it totally depends on what it is.
Okay.
A planner is going to be, that's probably the thickest one, or maybe I did a 1 line a day. What was it? I think I did like a 5-year planner. So that was quite it was like 250 pages, and really you really don't want to do too many, like more than 250 kind of max, because it just gets so thick.
Right.
And if the thicker it goes, you got to like make sure you adjust your gutter accordingly so your content isn't getting lost in the spine. But yeah, it just completely depends. It's just dependent on what the type of book calls for. A guest book might only have that minimum of 24 or whatever pages. If you're doing a daily planner, it's probably going to be more than 100. So yeah, it's just dependent on the type of book.
So Rachel, final question here. Denise is asking, could we please post your website information? So is it rachelharrisonsund.com?
It is, and my website's currently being redesigned, so it's go at your own risk. Right now. I always have to give this preamble of like, so when I first started, like I had just had a baby, so I was really like doing all of my work when my baby was asleep in the next room. So it'd be like, okay, I got 45 minutes, blah blah blah. Okay, I've got another 45 minutes. So I slapped up my website in like 2 hours. I just threw up like a WordPress template. I used all of my wedding photos because I had no professional photos of myself. Now, I did get married in a pink dress, so it wasn't obvious that it was a wedding dress, but I had like wedding hair and like I had like henna all over my hands. My husband is Indian, so we had sort of like an Indian style parts to our wedding. But so I've swapped out the photos, but it's still my old ugly website. So now I've actually got my husband, who's a designer. He's working on the new version of my website. So nice. I almost want to say like, wait until the new website's up. But yeah, if anyone wants to go see it, that's what it is.
Hey, we're authors. We know what it's like trying to paste together a website to try to get leads and stuff. And I just went there myself, and you've got a free guide, 3 steps to publishing your first low content book in less than a day. That sounds really interesting. I think I'd like to sign up for that. So check out Rachel's website, and more information coming about the Low Content Profit Academy and some of the other stuff that is moving forward with Rachel. Thank you so much for attending and for being here with us, Rachel. It has meant a lot.